and welcome to another player podcast at Somerset County Cricket Club. And today we're joined by Ian Blackwell. Blackie, lovely to see you back here at Taunton.
Nice to be back, Richard. Yeah, thanks for having me.
That's right, you're very welcome. And I would describe you as the man who's played the most aggressive championship innings I've ever seen here or anywhere else in all my watching days. And we'll talk about that a bit later on. But can you tell us how you sort of came to be here in the first place? You came here first in 2000. How did that come about?
Yeah, I was brought up in Derbyshire, Chesterfield, and I played all the way through the age groups and got onto the staff there in 96-7. Had 3 years there, and in 2099 I played a couple of good games against Somerset actually in the one-day stuff when I was making my way for Derby, and Dermot Reeve was the coach, and I think we got hammered down here, but I think I got 80, and we got hammered at Derby and I got 40, and and sort of Dermot said, I think you've got something that we'd be interested in utilising, and we need a spinner for the years going forward, because I think we just had Logger, Adrian Pearson down here, who was 38 at the time, and obviously he could see me bat as well, and you know he had high hopes for me, and said we want you to come and join Somerset.
And what was it like coming into the club at that stage with Dermot in charge and that sort of thing?
It was quite daunting in a way, because I think we all looked up at Dermot as a innovative coach and somebody that had obviously been at the very highest level, and he was always utilising the little grey areas in cricket, and you know just trying to be the best that he could be, and you know that sort of transpired with the squad we had. You go into a dressing room with Jamie Cox and Marcus Ruskothic, Andy Caddick, Mark Lathwell, you know some serious players in the team, and you know you sort of ask yourself, are you good enough to grace the same field as them in their team? So for me, that was having to break down those barriers at the age of 20, and you know come into a side that you know was very good and try and impress.
But obviously you came in and fitted in pretty well, didn't you? You seemed to pretty quickly establish yourself in the side.
Yeah, I think first year was pretty good. I think I might have scored 800 runs and got 30 odd wickets. But you know, when you're playing on an absolute road here at Somerset, it was difficult to take wickets. And I think anyone who said they played at Somerset in the early 2000s, they all knew it to be a batting paradise, and lots of runs, quick outfield, and bowling was quite tricky. But you know, I did okay, and I think then Kevin Shine took over the following year, and he brought Keith Dutch in from Middlesex, and I think he favoured him over me at the outset, and you know, I don't think I played in the first team until the middle of I think after the first 6 games of the second season, which was obviously disappointing on my part.
But then that second season, I mean, you got runs, and we had the 2001 championship with the cup win, didn't we?
Yeah.
I mean, that must be one of the highlights of your early career.
Yeah, it was. I think they also won it, or they won it the year before I joined, and to go back to back and sort of, you know, I think following those footsteps of what the team did, and to actually play in every game and to do quite well. We obviously thought we got a very good one-day side that could compete every year, and obviously Gloucester were, you know, second to none back in the day as well, and you know, it was a very close rivalry against the Gloucesters all the way through, and you know, we were fortunate enough to win in 2001. But yeah, it's obviously a very big highlight of my career, that as well. And
I'm guessing to lift a trophy at Lord's is something a bit special, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember much of it, if I'm honest, Richard, but I just remember I think England won 5-1 on the same day in the football, yes. And all I remember is just the phenomenal support that we had from the Somerset faithful, and you know, to hear everybody's names being chanted and all the adulation, especially after the crowds we get here to follow us to Lord's was very special.
Yeah, you've touched on something which everybody seems to mention. The crowds here are something different, aren't they? I mean, you've obviously now involved with umpiring, and you come here, and the crowds here as a player, and when you come as an outsider to look in. I mean, There's something special about Taunton crowds, isn't there?
Yeah, I've had it on all fronts. I've obviously come down here as an opposition player as well. Certainly when I'd moved to Durham, I think when Somerset got the better of Durham in one of the, I think might have been a quarter-final down here, you just realised that I was so happy sort of being a Somerset player with the crowds that they had rather than somebody from the opposition. So, yeah, it's a great place to come. The crowds seem, almost on top of you, and they're very vocal after they've had a bit of a session on the cider. And, it just makes for a great atmosphere because there's no malice there, not, to the extent where, it becomes that aggressive. But, they make themselves known and, most of the players appreciate it, and I know the home players do, and it's a great atmosphere to play in front of.
That 2001 team, I mean, you talked about Dutchie come in, Jono came in as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
And that sort of seemed to be the finishing touches in that team. It was sort of a rebuild, wasn't it, slightly? You came involved in 2000, they came in 2001, and suddenly it all seemed to click, didn't it?
It did. I think, obviously, we need to take wickets at Somerset, and I think we'd got enough batting power. Yes, we were going to miss Marcus playing for England, and Caddy was missing at times, but when we were full strength, we did need a second spinner, and Dutchie was a very good addition to that, and he was obviously in the one-day setup as well, and me and him bowling in tandem worked very well for the club, and to have someone like Richard Johnson with his strike power swung the ball, which if you're not going to bowl at express pace here at Somerset, if you swing it, you can get wickets, as Caddy proved, time and time again. So Jono slotted in nicely, and he's just a great guy to have in the changing room as well.
And obviously, if we can now move on to that 2003 season, let's talk about that game when Derby came down here. And talk us through it. It's looming large for me, so it must be with you, I'm guessing, but you've talked about it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was off the back of us all receiving letters from Peter Anderson for being that bad in the year that we were all threatened with a sack. And I think we came into those sort of last three games with something to prove. And, we finished very well here. I know I certainly did, scoring three big lots of runs. And the one against Derby, it's all a blur, really. I think we thought last game of the season it was a green wicket. We thought, well, we'll win the toss and we'll bat anyway, just because we'd had a gut full of fielding all year long here, and obviously it didn't go to plan. I think we were quickly 20 odd for 4 when I went in, and yeah, it was just one of those. Certainly didn't want to get out to Corky moments, which sort of started by innings, and it was quite pedestrian at the start, if I remember rightly. I just didn't want to get out to Corky, and I think he ran through the top order quite nicely, and we managed to limp to lunch, I think, at about 100 for 7 or a little more, and then after lunch, obviously found my third or fourth gear, and every ball that seemed to hit the middle either went for 4 or 6.
A bit understating it there, Blackie. Corky took, I think, 4 wickets for 5 runs off 18 balls.
Yeah.
And then your innings, actually you scored your big runs very quickly with 11 sixes and 29 fours, I want to say. That's off the top of my head.
27.
27. You see,
I do know, only because every century I did score that Jerry used to write me a scorecard. He used to do 2. He used to do 1 for me and 1 for my dad, and I do have them all framed up, to be fair. And the 200 is actually in my downstairs toilet. So every time I do visit the lavatory, it's something that I do look at, and gives me a bit of a smirk every now and again. Just I did play, and it was but the years keep sort of going. Oh God, that's 20 years ago now. So time certainly flies, but I do fond memories still of that day.
it was such clean hitting there, Blackie. That's what I remember of it. It wasn't slogging, it was clean hitting.
Yeah, it was just one of those days where things hit the middle, but equally you play out at Somerset and everything is true. The bounce was true. The wicket wasn't a particularly quick wicket, but it came onto the bat nicely. It bounced as it should do. and you could hit up on the ball. You could, wait for the ball to come under your eye line. And Corky was skillful. He got wickets by swinging the ball. And I think I just tended to watch the ball a lot more than perhaps other people for those reasons that I said earlier. So for me, it was not a case of trying to hit every ball for 4 or 6, because I think that's the danger of when you do that, you just hole out. So it was just one of those freak days, and, it happens once in a career. And, fortunately it was for me against Derby, and I believe it was Hildy's debut as well.
It was indeed. I was going to mention that. I mean, he's somebody else you've watched develop over the years, isn't it? I mean, he's had a wonderful career.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's actually godfather to Lily as well, my daughter. So, me and him are very close, and, it's great to see what he achieved at the club as well.
Go back to that innings again. Is it true that one of your 6s hit St James's Church roof? Do you think?
You tell me, Richard. I was, in the moment, it was. It definitely looked like it was heading towards the church. I think Kevin Dean was the bowler, and it's not that big a hit, to be fair. But I think some people say at the top of the church. I don't think it got anywhere near the top of the church, and if it did hit it, then I'll take that.
It's your target zone, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, long on.
Bottom end.
Certainly from the Botham stand end, anything into the graveyard and the churchyard is in my locker, and anywhere towards the flats and Cow Corner as well.
So where it's sitting now wouldn't be far off where the ball would have soared over.
Yeah, not too far, I suppose. You see some big hits nowadays, and whether or not you can compare with the stands that are here now, and you think, oh, that's a big hit. And I remember Keysvetter hit him one over the flats, and whether or not you think, could I have done that back in the day? You're not sure, but it seemed big at the time.
It did indeed. And 2003 saw the start of the T20 competition, didn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, what were your thoughts at the time about that?
I think everyone saw it as a bit of a hit and giggle. Certainly not the hype that there is today about T20 and the money involved, and probably the adulations that you get, certainly at international level if you move up, or IPL, and even now the 100 that's come out. We saw it basically as the 4-day team still playing one-day cricket. And then when you lost a few games and you're out of the tournament, you played all the youngsters to give the old boys a bit of a break. But now it's very much seen as a completely separate side, and the young lads come in and play with no fear. All the shots in the book, and some shots that you've never even seen before, and the game certainly changed. But I think we all loved it because it was it was seemed half a day's work for the same pay. So that was how it was viewed back in the day. But now it's obviously very different and very serious. And
you'd have made a lot more money, wouldn't you, now?
Potentially. I try not to think about it, Richard, if I'm honest. Well, you look at some of the money that's flying around now for players that really haven't played a 4-day game in their life, or they're not regulars at their county yet. They're going to T10 tournaments and the UAE or wherever the next tournament is, and they're earning some life-changing money, and fair play to them. It would have been nice if it was 20 years ago and the same happened, but unfortunately not, and I've got a life of umpiring ahead of me.
Let's move forward now to 2005. 2003-04, we were learning T20, weren't we? But then somebody came onto the scene in 2005 who made a huge difference to this club, didn't he? Yeah,
Graeme Smith. We were lucky enough to have Ricky Ponting the year before for half a dozen games. I think he came for a month, and just to be able to learn from both of those two was just a big eye-opener. Graeme came and captained the T20, and he just had a clear plan. We're going to win the toss, we're going to bat, we're going to post the total on the board, and then we're going to squeeze. And some of the field settings seem a bit rogue that he operated with, but he said that's where people hit the ball. Under pressure, you revert to the slogging across the line, and he was very innovative in that sort of sense. And we just got on a roll, and I think that is the tournament essentially. If you can get on a roll, win games, and we won games where we should never have won, but we put enough pressure on the opposition, and it's such a new tournament that people couldn't chase 7 and over. Now you think it's 10, 12, even 13, 14's gettable. 50 in 3 overs. You no way going to get that back in the day. But now, you know, you never say never. And, you know, we just utilised what was ahead of us at that time. And Graeme Smith was a fantastic leader and everyone followed.
I mean, that was a special day, wasn't it, the game at the Oval? And it rained and everything came into play. And we were very much the underdogs going into that final against a star-studded Lancashire side.
Yeah, I think we enjoyed that, to be fair. And I think it helped us being, I think we were the second semi-final on, so that we almost played back-to-back. So we were allowed a leisurely morning, which we had a meeting and, you know, Gareth put together Mark Garrow, the coach, he put together a big sort of montage of clips of everybody being brilliant. And we watched it and Graeme Smith said a few words and it was actually really powerful ahead of the day. And then we went to the Oval. We managed to watch some of the first semi-finals, so we could take in the crowd, the atmosphere, see what the wicket's doing. I think it went in our favour quite nicely, that did. And having a shortened chase against Lancashire proved to be the winning formula for us.
Yeah, I mean, and that was special. And the open top bus ride, you remember that here?
I do remember that, yes. Yeah, it was a bit surreal and strange, but I think a few people did turn out to see it. And yeah, it just brings a smile to your face knowing that you've brought something to the town and certainly the club.
And obviously you took over the skipper's role when Graeme Smith went. I mean, that must have been a special time for you.
Yeah, it was. It was the back end of the year after the T20s when Graeme left. It was, you know, it was great to sort of have a chance of captaining the club that I love so much. And as a young sort of side, it was difficult. It was tough. We had no real senior pros. We had quite a few missing with injury or selection with international cricket. So we just went out and played. There was no fear. I don't think there was any expectation on us, and I think we did okay, but by certainly no means we weren't challenging for any silverware. But you know, it was an ambition of mine that I wanted to captain the club and yeah, take it forward the best way I could.
Before we move on from 2005, you played in another never to be forgotten day when we beat the Aussies down here.
I did. I was under the radar that day. It was. I think the Graeme Smith and Jaya Surya show. Yeah. But yeah, Australia came and, you know, they treated it very much like a bit of a practice and a warm-up. They had several batters come in, get 70 and disappear off and, you know, let someone else have a go. Whereas we weren't likely to do that. We were obviously trying to win the game. And I think chasing 340, I think we were 200 for none off 20 overs. Two of the best hundreds I've ever witnessed in all my life in one-day cricket. And, you know, I still think we just about limped over the line, 5 down with Hildy scoring the winning runs, I believe. And, yeah, I managed to bat for a little while and get 20 odd. So it was, you know, a fantastic day in front of a full house.
I mean, that was fantastic. Again, one of those days, if you were here, you'd never forget it. A really special day. And then let's move into 2006 when obviously you started the season, but then you had a shoulder injury.
Yeah, I came back from India's one-day setup and series there, and I'd had a problem. So I'd had a jab while I was out there, which hadn't worked at all, and I was still getting the same pain. And I think it was only the second game of the season where I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't exactly know what. And I chased the ball down in front of us here, and I turned to throw it, and something pinged. And I threw the ball about 30 yards and I fell in a heap and I'm like, this is not right. So I remember Brian Rose driving me to hospital and we went and saw a specialist and they said the only way we're going to really know is if we go inside and take a look because the scan was clear. And I said, I can tell you it's not clear. There's something definitely going on. And all the things that were happening in the shoulder were when it was moving. So a stationary scan, everything seemed normal. I had no tear in the skin when I was stationary because they put some dye into the shoulder to see if it leaks through, and it didn't. But he said it was like a half-inch tear in the labrum, which I had. But there was a big dossier of what was wrong with my shoulder, and yeah, it wasn't great. So I had to have an immobilisation sling, and I had a slap tear repair done, and all sorts of bother, which obviously I've had it done 3 times now. So ultimately, that's what finished me off.
Yeah. And obviously then you didn't really play the rest of the season, did you?
No, I think I played the last 2 games, came back and probably too soon, probably shouldn't have bothered. But I think I was going slightly mad at that point, and to miss an entire season wasn't an option for me. And I was ready to start playing again, and I think it contributed a bit towards the last 2 championship matches. And it was not a great season for me.
Cam White skipper, didn't he?
Yes, yeah. I did some commentary actually that year, so it wasn't all lost, and quite enjoyed doing a few games down here where Cam White got his 150, was it?
Yeah,
I think
he got that T20 150.
Yeah, so it was interesting from that perspective, but also gutting I couldn't have been out there with him, doing the same.
Yeah, indeed. And 2007, you were part of the side that actually got us back into the First Division.
Yeah, I think our cricket took a turn for the better, certainly on the 4-day front around that time when Justin Langer came as captain, and the way he did things, it was interesting. But ultimately, we needed that rudder in the ship to steady us and turn us round, because, one for a better word, we were a bit of a rabble and with no direction. And the only time we had direction in the previous 2 years was when Ricky Ponting and Graeme Smith arrived. So that was certainly addressed, and the way he played his cricket, he was one of the hardest men on field that you come across, and that was his advantage. But a lot of people could say it was his flaw as well.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, we came back up. And we've stayed there ever since, haven't we? I mean, I've got pictures of celebrations at Essex, wasn't it?
Chelmsford.
Where we won it.
Yeah.
Always a nice place to go and win.
Always, because, they're a bit like the crowd here at Somerset on a Friday night in a T20, about it. And, to go there and to perform in the Championship and actually to win there was fantastic. And I think a lot of people took a big sigh of relief once we got over the line, because we knew we shouldn't be in the second division. As Notts at the time, they were a very good side, but to come ahead of those and actually win it, I think that just showed just how much we'd turned the club around.
And we had, a couple of bowlers, really fast bowlers. We had a good partnership there with Pup and with Caddy. 2 brilliant opening bowlers for us.
Yeah, and Caddy's record speaks for itself, but I think Charles was probably one of the most underrated swing bowlers at that time. I've never seen a guy swing the ball as much since Richard Johnson came to the club. But just to have a left armour and a different angle of attack just completed us, really. And, he got wicket after wicket. And, once he got on a roll, he could get 5 for 50 and, roll sides out for 150, which just made our jobs as batters even easier.
We've talked about your batting a lot. We haven't talked much about your bowling. And
not much to say, Richard, I think.
You've had some good returns for the club, haven't you? Was 7 for 90 was your best for Somerset?
Yeah,
I think?
back-to-back weeks of 7 to 90, I think.
Yeah.
But that, few and far between for me. It was, a case of playing here. My job was to bowl maidens, was to bowl from one end to rotate the seamers at the other end. And if I could pick up a wicket here or 2 along the way, then I was doing my job for the team. But my job, I basically said, go at 2 and over, keep it as tight as possible. And that wasn't very easy playing on a wicket like Taunton. Just glad they don't bat the way they did, or now, to how they do back in the day. So, I could bowl at batters and they, respect you a little more than perhaps they would now. But I love bowling. I'd rather bowl than stand in the field. If it was my wicket, I could prove to people that I could, spin the ball and take wickets. But I wouldn't say I was a wicket taker. I would say I was somebody that kept it tight and could bowl lots of overs, and quite often bowled a whole session, unchanged. And that's how I like to do it. I like to bowl 10, 15 overs on the trot and really get stuck into the batters.
Something we haven't talked about that's happened in between the times we've been talking was your England career. Tell us a little bit about that and how that all came about.
I think initially it was I got my chance via an injury to Andrew Flintoff. It was one of the cups out I went to Sri Lanka and just a round robin tournament. I think we only played 2 games in our group of 3, and it was can't remember what kind of it was. Just an ICC Champions Trophy type thing, and I got the call because Flintoff, I think, had a shoulder injury. I had something, and obviously they thought they might need an extra spinner as opposed to, somebody that can bowl fast or medium fast. And obviously my batting helped me get that position as well. But that was my first introduction to playing for England, which was a bit of a surprise at the time, but one that I hoped would come, and very thankful for the opportunity.
Of course, we had 3 of you playing for England, didn't we, at one stage?
Yeah, with Johnson and Caddick as well, yeah.
And Trez?
Yeah, Trez, yeah. I'd say Johnno was a bit after, but me, Caddy and Trez both went to that ICC Champions Trophy.
Yeah, I mean, that great ambition to play for England and to get that chance, something else you can tick the box to say I've done it.
Yeah, you get your numbers playing for England and no one can take them away.
37?
Yeah, that was my shirt number, but 170 was my ODI number, and 629 was my test number. But it was one of those surreal moments where, am I good enough for this? Why have I been picked? What am I doing? And then, you have to go in and bat out of position and not bowl perhaps when you would do for your county. So it's all a bit surreal, and I don't think we quite got the opportunities back then as you get now with, being included in series after series and given those opportunities, where I just felt I was playing for my next game, which, rightly or wrongly was a good way to look at it, I suppose, because if I performed, I knew that I was going to get another game. But equally, I never felt part of the team, which, is a strange thing to say, but that's how I felt at the time.
We won promotion in 2007 back into the First Division. You had a big season in 2008, didn't you? You got 1,000 runs.
Yeah, I think only 5 of us that year got 1,000 runs. I think it was me, Trez and JL for Somerset. So 3 of us were playing here, which probably shows you just how flat the wicket was compared to everywhere else in the country. And I thought I'd perform pretty well, scoring quite a lot of consistent runs and saving games at the right time if we were in trouble. And I chipped in with a few wickets as well. And it was a pretty good year for me, 2008.
And then, disappointingly, you drifted off and went over to Durham.
Yes.
Hard decision to make?
Very, yeah. My wife at the time, Beth, she was pregnant with the twins. And I'd still had 2 years left on my contract. And, a move to another club wasn't on my radar. And even when it happened, it still wasn't on my radar. So, it was one of those unfortunate things where certain things aligned in the wrong way, shall we say, and it led me to having to go somewhere else.
But you had good seasons with Durham, didn't you? Very good seasons.
Yeah, and I think I didn't have anything to prove, but it was nice to go to Durham and actually won Supporters Player of the Year my first year. I think I scored just under 1,000 runs and got 48 wickets. So I knew that I could do it. It was an amazing new challenge, and to go into a Durham side that were full of internationals, playing with Benke and Diver and, there was Plunkett, Mustard, Onions, Harmison. The list was endless, and Shiv Chandapal, he was overseas, and, to slot into that side and to win the championship, it was a phenomenal first year and something that probably the previous year would never have even thought would happen.
No, and then you had times there, and then towards the end of your playing career, you had half a season down at Warwickshire, didn't you? And another championship medal. Yeah,
I had second shoulder operation as well, which hampered somewhat the Durham part of my career. And then towards the end, 2012, Collie got left out of the England setup, so he came back and he wanted to bat 6. So he sort of nudged me out of the side because obviously, Durham is his club, and he's obviously got the Trez reputation of Durham. So, it was tough for me to get into the side. They ended up playing Scott Borthwick as the spinner, who ended up batting 3. They obviously played on predominantly seaming pitches, so didn't use the spin option until we went away from home. So, frustratingly, I got left out the T20 side middle of that summer, to which then I went and did some umpiring. So I wondered if I was going to enjoy it or not. And it was a time where the T20 was a block. So I had sort of 3 or 4 weeks where I could actually do 3 umpiring games on the trot, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I did my level 3 coaching, but that wasn't something I wanted to pursue because it's very volatile as a coach, and wasn't a passion of mine. Just did it just because I thought I might need something at the end of my career. But then when I started umpiring, loved it and wanted to pursue that. And here we are now after doing 5 years, I say, before I got onto the list.
Yeah, and your first game was here, wasn't it? First class game for Somerset, wasn't it? 2015, wasn't that?
No, I did one here, but my first one I think was at might have been at Sussex with Jerry.
Right.
So, but I'd done a well, it might have been a university game.
Yeah, you did a Durham university game.
Yeah,
that was with Wolfie. I think.
That was classed as first class. That would have been my first, but the first championship game was with Jerry. But yeah, it was nice to obviously stand here and you sort of look around and have those fond moments of you being out there as a cricketer rather than as an umpire, and just looking at how things have changed over the years.
Things have changed here, haven't they? I mean, but it's still got something about it when you come back here, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's still very special. You wouldn't call it a stadium. I think it's one of those that sort of progressed as a ground still. And yeah, I mean, there was cinema seats there and a very upright stand, and you were literally on the boundary. The flats weren't there, and there's a little cow shed in the bottom where it's obviously the Hildreth stand. So a lot of things have changed, and obviously we're in the Colin Atkinson Pavilion before the Caddick Pavilion was built. So yeah, a lot of things have changed, and it's probably nice in a way that I witnessed it as a player as it was very different to how it is now, because I think that would be a bit more strange.
Yeah, and here you are, after all the years, still living here in Taunton and enjoying being around and about.
Yeah, I don't think I'd move anywhere else, unless I had to go. Obviously, my kids live around here, and they're growing fast, and I'm more of a taxi service now for them than anything else. Which it's great to see them love the sport as well and get involved. They're all in the development here, so I know they want to be cricketers. So whether or not that'll transpire, we'll wait and see. But I love it round here, and I consider it my home more than I do Chesterfield and Derbyshire.
Brilliant, Blackie. Lovely to talk to you. Thank you for coming and giving us your time today.
Thanks very much, Richard.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.